WADR, West Africa Democracy Radio.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Banjul, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. This is a news link, but first let's bring you top and developing stories. General Brice Oligui Nguema takes over as transitional president of Gabon after the ousting of President Ali Bongo. Meanwhile, long-serving African heads of state forcibly retired service chiefs. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu engages global leaders on Niger Republic crisis and Gabon's evolving situation.
The President is working very closely and continuing to communicate with other heads of state in the African Union toward a comprehensive consensus on the next steps forward with respect to how the crisis in Gabon will play out.
More in the Sahel, the Burkinabe transitional government authorities authorized the deployment of troops to Niger to prepare for any military intervention, and Russia appeals to the UN Security Council to end autonomous oversight of Mali sanctions by 2024. Details of these stories are more coming up shortly.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Liberia and Ghana. Our first story emanates from Gabon, a Central African nation where a military coup has taken place. So institutions dissolved and all borders closed following the ousting of President Ali Bongo. In a televised address, coup leaders under the aegis of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, CTRI, have announced its interim president. General Brice Oligui Nguema is now the designated transitional president of the oil-rich country, while the military now in command also announced the restoration of nationwide internet connection. French media outlets, namely France 24, RFI, and TV5, whose broadcast rights were suspended because of the elections, have been reinstated. Imo Edet has more in this report.
As conveyed through a press statement aired on Gabon 24, the national television channel, Colonel Ulrich Manfumbi, spokesperson for the CTRI, that is Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, announced that General Oligui Nguema Brice has been unanimously chosen as the president of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, thereby assuming the role of transitional president. This decision came after a meeting that included all commanders-in-chief, chief staff members, and generals from the second section of the Gabonese Republic. The senior officer further stated that the head of the Republican Guard issued an order for the restoration of optical fiber connectivity and the reinstatement of signals from international radio and television channels across various broadcasting platforms in Gabon. Starting from August 26, which was election day, the Bongo government enforced a complete lockdown by severing internet access and restricting broadcasts to French-speaking media outlets France 24, RFI, and TV5 Monde. The colonel also emphasized that the transitional president emphasizes the importance of maintaining a state of calm and serenity within the nation, expressing the commitment of the transitional president to safeguard the economic framework seen as a cornerstone of social well-being.
Imo Edet reports in there. And as coups continue to spread on the African continent, some African leaders, notably President Paul Biya of Cameroon and his Rwanda counterpart Paul Kagame, are taking proactive steps by reshuffling the force and security structures. Francis Boniface brings the details of some of these changes.
On Wednesday, Cameroonian President Paul Biya made major changes to the country's Ministry of Defense and replaced service chiefs, including the Army, Air Force, Navy, and the National Police. President Biya, who came to power in 1982, has ruled the Central African nation for 4 decades. His administration has been marred by reports of oppression and human rights violations, mostly perpetuated by the armed forces, and separatist violence in the Anglophone regions. The Cameroonian head of state is 90 years old. Elsewhere in Rwanda, the Defense Force RDF announced on X, formerly Twitter, that President Paul Kagame approved the retirement of 83 senior officers. The retirement, as reported by the RDF, was immediately followed by the promotion and appointment of officers to occupy the vacant positions. As a reminder, Rwanda's constitution was changed in 2015 to allow Kagame, now 65, to remain president until 2034. The Rwandan leader, one of Africa's longest-serving presidents, has been in office since 2000. The decisions of Kagame and Biya to reshuffle their militaries came a few hours after soldiers seized power in Gabon, putting an end to the half-a-century rule of the Bongo family in the oil-rich country.
Francis Boniface filed that report. Now, for an in-depth analysis of this development, stay with us as James Japan engages a regional security expert, Morgan Asoba. Meanwhile, ECOWAS chairperson, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria, has announced his engagement with global leaders regarding the challenges faced by Niger Republic during the crisis as well as evolving circumstances in Gabon. In a statement by his special advisor on media and publicity, Ajuri Ngaleli, President Tinubu emphasized his attentive observation of the nation's socio-political equilibrium. He also voiced his profound apprehension about the growing prevalence of autocratic disputes that seem to be spreading across various parts of the African continent. WEDR's Usman Umar in Abuja completes the story.
The statement from the Nigerian leader comes just hours after Gabonese army officers operating as the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions announced on national television their successful overthrow of the government led by President Ali Bongo Ondimba, who had been in power for 14 years. This dramatic development occurred shortly after President Bongo was declared the winner of Saturday's election. The military officers stated that the election results were invalidated and all existing institutions of the republic were dissolved. President Tinubu expressed deep concern over these events, emphasizing their significance for advocates of democracy.
The president is working very closely and continuing to communicate with other heads of state in the African Union toward a comprehensive consensus on the next steps forward with respect to how the crisis in Gabon will play out, into how the continent will respond to the contagion of autocracy we are seeing spread across our continent.
It was also revealed that President Bola Tinubu engaged in a conversation with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. During their discussion, the two heads of state mutually affirmed that the promotion and safeguarding of constitutional democratic governance in Africa remain of paramount importance. Regarding the military coup in Gabon, the coup leaders have reported the apprehension of key figures, including Bongo's son and trusted advisor, Nuruddin Bongo Valentin, as well as his chief of staff, Ayan Ghislaine Ngolu. Two other presidential advisors, the top officials from the ruling Gabonese Democratic Party, have also been detained. These individuals face allegations encompassing treason, embezzlement, corruption, and forgery of the president's signature, among other charges. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NewsLink continues.
In Niger, the civil society group known as M62 is actively rallying for the withdrawal of foreign military forces from the nation. The mobilization comes in light of the impending expiration this Saturday of the ultimatum given by the ruling military to French forces, urging them to exit Niger. Following the assumption of power through a coup d'etat a month ago, the military publicly criticized the defense pact that existed between Niger and France. And across the border in Burkina Faso, the transitional government has approved the deployment of troops to join Nigerian forces as they're ready for any possible military intervention. The deployment was agreed on Wednesday at the Council of Ministers, a meeting chaired by the Burkinabe interim president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, in Ouagadougou. More details with Matty C.
The green light to send troops to neighboring Niger comes a month after the coup that ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. A statement released Wednesday indicates that the government has been authorized to deploy a military contingent in Niger in line with the country's strategic commitments. Colonel Major Kassoum Koulibaly, the Burkinabe Minister of Defense, reiterates that this commitment is made to prevent and best lead a combined fight against terrorism and respond to deep aspirations of the population. What affects the security of Niger fundamentally affects the security of Burkina Faso, he added. Recall last week, Niger's military authorities approved the intervention of troops from neighboring Mali and Burkina Faso in the event of any aggression. General Abdurrahman Chiani's response follows the activation of the standby force by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, aimed at reinstating President Mohamed Bazoum. Chiani, until the July 26th coup, was the commander of the Presidential Guard to his principal Bazoum. The junta leaders in Burkina Faso and Mali have not only affirmed their support for the military rule in Niger, but declared any military action against Niamey as an act of war.
Matisi reporting. Let's turn our attention to Mali, where Russia has made a plea to the United Nations Security Council to terminate the autonomous oversight of specific UN sanctions imposed on Bamako and by August 2024 fully dismantle the sanctions framework that is currently in place for the Sahelian country. This action comes in response to a proposal presented by France and United Arab Emirates. Their proposition advocates for an extension of the sanctions mechanism and continuation of impartial monitoring of an additional year. It also indicates a willingness to assess these measures. James Japan has more.
For a resolution to be adopted, it requires a minimum of 9 affirmative votes without being vetoed by Russia, China, the United States, Britain, or France. Moscow's decision follows a prior council vote in June that concluded a decade-long peacekeeping mission in Mali. This decision was prompted by the sudden request from the military junta for the 13,000-strong peacekeeping force to exit the country. The United States alleged that this move was influenced by Russia's Wagner mercenary group, which maintains around 1,000 fighters in Mali. In 2017, the Security Council established a sanctions framework for Mali, granting it the authority to impose travel bans and asset freezes on individuals or entities that violate or obstruct the 2015 peace agreement, impede humanitarian assistance, engage in human rights violations, or recruit child soldiers. On Monday, El Gassim Wad, the head of the United Nations mission in Mali, stated that the extremely challenging second phase of the withdrawal of the peacekeeping forces from Mali faces issues due to the tight schedule and security or logistical conditions. Although the planned closure date for the mission remains December 31st, one acknowledged setbacks in the implementation of the initial withdrawal phase. One detailed that the upcoming second phase of the withdrawal will revolve around closing 6 bases including Tessalit, Aguelhok and Kidal in the north, Douenza and Opti in the center, and Ansongo in the east.
James Japan with that report. Now addressing the president of the transition in Guinea, memorandum was dispatched on Wednesday by the Assembly of Political Coalitions and overarching civil society entities involved in the 2022 dialogue framework. In this comprehensive 8-page document, these participants from the political and civil society spheres voiced their criticism of the management of the ongoing transition. They further expressed their discontent over the frequent communication between the government and their own representatives. After a fortnight of discussions, the Assembly of Political Alliances and Umbrella Organizations representing CSOs reached a consensus on the content of the memorandum presented to the government on Wednesday. Oba Owari, who leads the UDRG party, highlights the complete lack of communication between themselves and transitional authorities. Concerning the funding required for the implementation of the 10 points outlined in the schedule, these socio-political participants are urging the transition authorities to utilize the national budget. You are listening to NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. General Brice Oligui Nguema takes over as transitional president of Gabon after the ousting of President Ali Bongo. Meanwhile, long-serving African heads of state forcibly retire service chiefs. Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu engages global leaders on Niger Republic crisis and Gabon's evolving situation. The Burkinabe transitional government authorizes the deployment of troops to Niger to prepare for any military intervention. And Russia appeals to UN Security Council to end autonomous oversight of Mali sanctions by 2024. Still ahead in the news is the press review, a guest interview, and sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Remember, we are streaming live on wadr.org and live on YouTube on WADR. The Gambian government has taken into custody a Bissau-Guinean along with 7 other nationals as disclosed by the government spokesperson. No additional details concerning circumstances of the detention have been disclosed. However, authorities have stated that investigations are currently ongoing. WADR's Banjul correspondent Sankule Janko reports.
In a brief and concise official statement released by the Office of the Government spokesperson, Gambian authorities have confirmed the apprehension of Paulo Jabi, a Bissau-Guinean, along with 7 other individuals. The exact cause for the arrest of Mr. Jabi and his associates has not been disclosed by the government. The statement, however, reveals that as part of the government's efforts to combat criminal activities, a recent sting operation was executed by a multi-sectorial security team. This operation, it said, led to the arrest of Paulo and the suspected co-conspirators. The statement further asserts that this operation underscores the Gambia government's unwavering commitment to ensuring the highest level of national security, the safety of its citizens, and the well-being of residents. Due to ongoing investigations, additional details cannot be shared at this time as the government seeks to avoid jeopardizing critical leads being pursued by the investigators. In the interim, the authorities appeal to the public to avoid engaging in speculation and disseminating misinformation that might inadvertently assist those who engage in unlawful activities. For NEWSLINK on West African Democracy Radio, I'm Sankule Janko reporting from Banjul.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Now for a feel of major and trending stories on Ghanaian national dailies, let's join WADR's Accra correspondent Atiu Mbila Lawson.
Welcome to the newspaper review. Let's start with the headlines in the Daily Graphic newspaper. The screaming headline, largest salt mine starts operations, Electrochem employs 3,000 workers. Some banner headlines, nation must rally behind industrial agenda, according to panelists from a Daily Graphic breakfast summit. Also, Nana Appiah-Mensah slapped with 39 criminal charges. For those who are not aware, Nana Appiah-Mensah was the brain behind the Men's Gold dealership, which later turned into an illegal enterprise. He was arrested and thousands of customers have their monies locked up. So those are the headlines in the Daily Graphic newspaper. The New Crusading Guide newspaper, Volta River Authority's profit-making trend amazing, according to the Doma East Member of Parliament. Then Attorney General files charges against NAM1, court hearing fixed for 19th September. And then stop threatening and behave like a party man. That's what a group is telling Kennedy Japong. He contested to be the running mate of the governing New Patriotic Party over the weekend Superdelegates Congress. He made it through and will be contesting in the final round in November. And then 2 shot dead, several others injured at Aduajiri. That's unfortunate. Usahine Boachijan is dead. Some more unfortunate news. And then let's shift focus to blue economy and promote economic growth. That's according to Dr. Osei Bonsu Dixon. So those are the headlines in the New Crusading Guide newspaper. let's bring you some headlines from the National Voice newspaper. Volta River Authority makes government proud as it continues to record operational profit. Then IMF praises Bank of Ghana for tightening monetary policy. So those are the headlines in the National Voice newspaper. Let's do some business stories. The Business Analyst newspaper, the screaming headline, government committed to increasing financial inclusion to 85%. That's the screaming headline there. Then some banner headlines. We need to see ourselves as partners and not enemies. That's according to the Ghana Journalists Association, and he's speaking to political parties. Some more banner headlines. Senior high school students to study aviation and aerospace courses, according to the Education Minister, and Goldfields Lords Gensa Energy. And that's how we wrap up the newspaper review for today. My name is Atiewin Imbila Lawson from Accra, Ghana. Back to you in the studio.
Politics,
analyses on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The latest coup in Gabon has prompted some African leaders to make significant changes in their defense systems. Key among them is the 90-year-old Cameroonian President Paul Biya, who was in power in 1982, and his counterpart, the 65-year-old Paul Kagame of Rwanda, who amended his country's constitution to stay in power till 2034. While the former has reshuffled his efforts, Navy and police, the latter has approved the appointment and promotion of some new officers to replace the previous office holders. Following viral videos of jubilations and cheering moods of citizens in coup-prone countries recently, there seems to be a new dimension of how the news is received, contrary to its condemnation previously. Our guest, Morgan Asogba, analyzes the spread of this coup comprehensively and the signal it portrays to both regional and international bodies concerning leadership in Africa. He first responds to whether democracy in Africa is threatened.
Well, let us say that democracy is not threatened. What is threatened is leadership, the style of leadership that has been in practice for a while now. We are currently witnessing a paradigm shift in leadership, showing that the people, which are the demos of the expression democracy, are not feeling anymore in harmony with the way leadership have been managing the public wealth and the countries. And this is why some of the head of state are looking directly at their military powers, how they are managed and who are the people leading. Because in this specific situation, we have three main powers to maintain balance when you are into leadership. You have the leader, which is the executive, you have the people on one side, and you have the military on the other side. So when two of these powers are together, it is very difficult for anything like a coup to happen. But when two of these powers are in line against one of them, which is the case that we are witnessing so far in all the countries that we are witnessing the coup d'etat, things can change from a day to another one.
So there seems to be a new dimension on the receipt of the news about coup in recent times. I'm talking about jubilation and cheering mood of citizens in the said countries following viral videos. What signal does this send to regional and international bodies?
Well, this falls within the explanation we've been given so far. It simply means that the people are not finding themselves involved in what should be considered as the democratic way into investing their leaders. They are contesting the process, and if the process is biased, it is obvious that what is being handled is not the will of the people. So there is a kind of dislocation or disapproval between the way things are run by leaders and the way the people want things to be run. The coup are not something to be promoted, but they actually indicate a serious fundamental issue that is the key of democracy.
So finally, ECOWAS Chairperson and President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria has expressed his apprehension towards what he calls a contagious autocracy autocracy moving across the continent. At this stage, what are the clear measures to address this situation?
This is an issue that is showing clearly that leaders, all the measures that have been taken so far, sanctions and the threat to use force, are not definitely efficient, because we've been seeing them, especially with the sanction, we have the boomerang effect. And when it comes to the use of force, we have the shadow of security issues that could emerge once the use of force is being done. So most of the head of state and the international institutions should be thinking about conducting a profound diagnostic to identify the root causes and then to monitor the transition as fast as possible.
That was Morgan Asogba, a regional security expert. It's now time for sports news. Let's join Sankule Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Nigeria Football Federation (NFF) has reportedly shortlisted 3 coaches on interim basis. The chosen tactician is expected to lead the players in their final Africa Cup of Nations AFCON qualifier game against Sao Tome and Principe. This comes following the departure of Jose Peseiro, whose contract was not renewed by the NFF after it had expired 2 months ago. The shortlisted coaches, according to local media reports in Nigeria, are Austin Egovon, who also serves as the head of NFF Technical Department, head coach of Enyimba FC, Finidi George, and former under-23 head coach Salisu Yusuf. The selected coach among the 3 is expected to serve on temporary basis before the permanent coach is appointed. Elsewhere, the draw for the inaugural African Football League is set to be conducted on 2 September 2023. The tournament, which is a partnership between FIFA and CAF, is scheduled to kick off in October 2023. It will feature 8 of Africa's most successful teams from 3 regional blocks, which are the Northern Region, the Central West Region, and the Southeast Region, according to reports. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And that's how we end this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram @WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is WADR's Environment Program in English and Viroscope, while Patrick Degbevi comes live at 1 p.m. with the second edition of Info Chez Vous, our comprehensive news package in French. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah Region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your